from Agora Consulting Partners, and today I'm going to talk to you about reporting best practices and show you some of the cool new products that we've built for Microsoft Project Online, and talk about some customers and how they have taken those best practices and put them into play. All right, so let's get started. Just going to start my screen share. Okay, so before we jump right into reporting, we're going to talk a little bit about why projects fail when they do, how they perform throughout the life cycle. Everybody's heard the 50% of projects fail or are canceled. Everybody knows that theory. But what you'll start to notice over time, and I'm sure you have seen these trends in your organization, is that most projects go off track when they are in the execution stage. Most companies do really well when it comes to requirements gathering, designing their solution or project, and laying out all the pieces of the puzzle. But when it comes to execution, that's when things can go wrong. And we all know that. So that is really the point where it's very important for us to be monitoring our projects. It's important for us to put in better processes and mechanisms so that we can monitor what's happening, we can report on that, and we can make the decisions that need to be made to bring those projects back on track and reduce the number of overrun that we have. So get our projects in scope, on budget, and on time as much as possible. Why should you care about that? Of course, as I said, many projects have cost overruns. Sometimes if you're not monitoring closely, the issues come up too late for you to resolve. Everybody in the organization is in crisis mode, and at the end of the day, that really reduces your team engagement. So, from a project management perspective, when should you start to look at your organization and at your project and realize if you need closer or better reporting and monitoring of your project? When you start to notice that there's expansions in the budgets of many of your projects, schedules get stretched out, the project scope gets changed. So you always get a lot of CRs coming in. There are delays in the project. There's lots of revisions that need to happen. And this can happen in what people call agile projects, but still you need to look at your project overall and realize how often is this happening, and is this causing delays in the project or the project to not be met within the expectations that were set. Is there a flurry of requests for information because people don't know what's going on? And as I mentioned, if there's lots of CRs. So jumping into, before we go into how project management best practices for reporting, let's take a step back and understand how reports overall can be misleading. So Harvard Business did a study, and in their study, they looked at reports that lie. And they just looked at reports in general. So you're looking at two reports, one on my left-hand side and one on my right-hand side. So what's wrong with the first report? And what's right about the second report? That's what we're going to talk about. The first report represents the data related by geography. So what this map is showing is the Obama versus McCain campaign in 2008, and it's showing the votes by geography. And because of the way that the map is laid out and it's showing the information, although the data is true, the report itself is not true. It's misleading. And by looking at this, you're seeing a lot more red. So you're thinking that the McCain campaign is winning. Now, the reason that this report is wrong and the way to do the report is the right-hand side. And as you can see, that's kind of a bubble chart. And the reason for that is Montana, for example, is a state that covers 4% of the area, but only 0.3% of the population. And New York, which covers only 0.01% of the area, has 2.7% of the population. So New York has a higher population, less geography. So really, we need to kind of show this report by density. We all know that there was a huge landslide win for the Democrats, and 80% of the graph is in red on the left, but we know that John McCain really received only 40% of the votes. So the right way to do it is the bubble chart, and it gives you an accurate description of non-spatial data. So as we can see that reports, although both are showing the same data, need to be organized in a way that they are not misleading. Really got us thinking, do project management reports do that? And if they do, how can we make them better so that they are not misleading? They do allow organizations to get to the root of the issues or the risks that are coming down and keep their projects on scope, on time, and in budget. So we'll start off by looking at this report. And the report here, we're looking at a typical status report that most organizations have. I've oversimplified it for the purposes of this presentation, but as you can see, it has kind of the areas that we're looking at in the project: scope, cost, quality, etc., upcoming issues and risks. Now, how is this report misleading? Because this is the typical status report that most organizations put up there. And the reasons would be, A, we don't know who this report is for. So who is the audience this report is for, and what decisions do they need to make? If you're not doing this already today, take a look at all of the project management reports that your organization is producing and write down who that report is for and what decision they need to make from that report. Because really, when you're organizing these reports, it needs to help that decision maker quickly come to that decision. So if you're giving everybody this same status report, you're already misleading them with the ability to make project management decisions. There's also a lack of measurement criteria. So I don't know what red is or green is. I don't know if red means that cost is over by 20% or 50%, or what is the difference between yellow and red? So those kinds of criteria has not been there. Make sure you have that legend in all of your reporting so that people can understand when you have indicators what they actually mean. Make sure that these indicators, whenever possible, you're doing a quantitative assessment instead of a qualitative. So you don't end up with PMs who are reporting something as yellow because their instincts tell them that it's yellow, that it actually, the yellow means something to the organization. The other issue that we've seen with this type of report is it can really be misleading in terms of what data is shown. So you can see that there's one issue, there's a bunch of risks, there's no mitigation plan in there, there's no contingency plan of what's going to happen. It's not really letting us know how the project is going to get back on track and what the plan is. It's not putting in the types of decisions that need to be made. So we'll go into looking at some of the challenges in project management reporting. So we've looked at that and we say, okay, yes, Tani, like it's pretty difficult to do. Every project has a ton of stakeholders, and really the PM's job is to be doing a lot of negotiation, conflict resolution, communication, working with the stakeholders. So make sure that you're having the accurate reporting for those stakeholders out. Reducing the time. So again, if you're saying, okay, now you're telling me I have to do 10 different reports, well, I don't have that time. Myself, I was a project manager before I came into this role today that I'm doing. And for me, I used to spend half my day from Friday morning 9 to noon up to lunchtime getting my project status reports up to date. There were so many little details that had to go in there, and I was doing it manually that one little thing could get missed very, very easily. So it was very time consuming. There was no way I was going to go do 10 different reports for my stakeholders. So whenever possible, you know, we're going to look at how technology can help you deal with that administrative burden. Metrics. So metrics, I said that cost one, and I said, what does cost mean? Does it mean that the budget is over by 20% if it's yellow or green? That's easy to say, but sometimes these metrics are really hard to quantify in a project management report. It's really hard to tell whether a project is meeting scope sometimes, because you're not looking at every single detail, or it's really hard to say whether a project is measured by quality if you're not working in a manufacturing firm. And sometimes in organizations, those really are based on instinct and experience within the organization. There's also a role of politics that I know that every project manager out there that you are dealing with today, and that is, what does it mean for the organization? Do the owners understand the impact of a change or a delay? Are we just reporting on it, or are we ensuring that they're understanding that? Are we having issues with getting approvals on time? Is there only specific things you're allowed to share with specific stakeholders that always kind of challenge you in giving that transparency? We find that with most project organizations that status reports result in everyone going into crisis mode and trying to solve that. I actually had that in my previous role. I was leading an e-commerce PMO in Canada, and we were launching a major site for a major retailer in Canada, and we had basically we were running around. We realized, oh, this is red, now we have to fix it. And we were only fixing things when they got to red. So really, it's really challenging in reporting to be able to predict those things because there's so many pieces and they're moving so quickly. And sometimes it's also because you're reporting against outdated baselines. So maybe at the beginning of the project, you determined that things were going to go a certain way. And when you get there, that baseline doesn't make sense anymore because the scope has changed, the project has changed. And this is explained away in project management methodology as kind of the cone of uncertainty, right? You don't know what's going to happen in the project until you get through the project. So you're really just estimating at the beginning. So you're always going to have reds. So we have to figure out how to deal with that theory because it is going to happen. You're right. You're not going to know everything from day one, but how do you adjust your reporting accordingly? So we're going to talk about, I'm going to quickly talk about how 2 customers that we have here at Agora have solved this problem and are taking steps to getting better and better at their reporting, just to give you some ideas. And then I'm going to actually jump into a demonstration environment and show you how their best practices and their direction in reporting actually inspired some of the products that we're offering customers today. Cancer Care Ontario is one of our major leading customers here at Agora, and they came to us and said, our objective is to ensure that our reports lead to actions. This is really important. A lot of the times, you'll have stakeholders and you'll have PMs who put up a status report and say, this is in red. And everyone goes, yes, we know it's in red. But it doesn't really result in a decision. So what we need to do is always get agreement from your project stakeholders, from your sponsors. If this goes to red, what does that mean for us and what's going to happen? Have those decisions laid out. This is in red. This is what we need to do because it's in red. So they wanted to make sure that people weren't just looking and absorbing the data, but they were actually taking action. The way that they did this was actually very interesting, and it's very new in looking at reporting. They did a hybrid model where they had automated reports that were quantitatively measured versus the reports that the PMs were putting in. So they had, the PMO had a side-by-side dashboards where they could say, okay, if budget is over by 20%, it should be yellow. Is the PM reporting it as yellow or green? And the reason that they did that was they wanted to make sure before they went and changed anything in their reporting that the metrics, those indicators that we talked about in the last screen, meant the same thing to everybody. By doing that, what they actually found was their PMs were reporting the issues way ahead before they were coming. They were predicting it, which is great for the organization. But by having the ability to track and having that hybrid model, they were able to confirm and the PMO was able to ensure that reports got better and better because now the data was credible. So the reports that the stakeholders and sponsors were getting was something that they could trust. And once you could trust the data, you could make decisions from the data. It wasn't outdated, it was actually predictive, which was excellent for the organization. Our other large customer was Export Development Canada that I'm going to be talking about today. They came to us and said, we want to do reporting that reduces that administrative burden that we just discussed. So they wanted to make it self-serve. So the strategy that they came in with was automate as much as possible. If we're storing the data somewhere, let's pull it in and then have the PMs focus on explaining the results of this or the actions that need to be taken or the contingency plans that they had in place. Let's have the PMs focus on actually managing the project instead of pulling the data together. So by doing that, they've actually improved productivity, and they're measuring it, which is great. You'll see in the next slide a quote right here at the bottom of the page from Heloisa at EDC. They're on track for meeting their anticipated productivity gains by 6%. Simply by automating reporting, they were able to become a more efficient organization from their PPM practices. So before I jump right into the demo, I do want to quickly talk about how the technology can solve this. And if you have any questions on this, you can always reach out. I'm going to only spend a minute here. But there are 3 ways that inspired this. So we know that there's issues in reporting. We've looked at the research. We've worked with over 100 customers across Canada. We have the best practices that our customers have put in place, and we've worked with them over a number of years to put in those best practice methodologies and see how they work. And now we're able to bring those to you. We have 3 different ways that you can do that. Our Express solution, what we've done is we've taken some of these reporting tools and created what we call apps. I'll show you a few of them in a second. And what they will do is it's a click and run solution. You just click on the app, you click on Express, you download it, we set you up with your login, you're good to go. And you just use it. You pull your data, you have all your reports automatically produced. So if you are just starting from scratch, you want to start with best practices reporting, Express is your way to go. If you're looking at, okay, we have specific reports in place, we want to understand how to make them better, we have something that's called our Sprint program. So that's really popular working with Microsoft in their partner-led trial or POC programs, proof of concept programs. If you're looking at increasing efficiencies, or you have a use case like we talked about with our customers, with the case studies I just talked about a minute ago, and you say, okay, Tani, we need to make sure that we're not spending as much time on the admin and we're actually solving project management problems. Great. The Sprint will allow us to focus on that use case and help you solve that reporting issue. So if you already have those reports in place and practices in place, Sprint is kind of the solution that'll get you to do the reporting and work backwards and then evaluate to make sure that it's actually working for your organization and that you can measure it, just like EDC, and say, we've increased efficiency by X%. If you are changing your reporting and you kind of have a vision of where you want to go, and you're building something that's very custom to your organization, then that's when you'd use our AIM methodology, which is our Agora implementation methodology. And that's where we would come in and do a traditional, we design out your reports, we'd sit with your stakeholders and ask those same questions that I just asked. What questions are you trying to answer from this report? What are you doing in your business? What business decisions do you need to make? And then work backwards and build those project reports. So not one status report for everybody to go. Depending on where your organization is, those are kind of the 3 ways that you can do it. Look at it as, I don't have anything right now. I'm going to start with a best practice, which is the Express. I do have something right now. I want to evaluate how it's working and make it better. So you're sprinting for each of your reports, or I want to redesign the whole thing. So I'm going to actually, I'm actually going to jump into a technology presentation to show you a couple of examples. We'll start off with our Express solution, just because everybody asks for what's out of the box, what can I just start with today? So we've built what we call our Status Manager app and our Port app that gives you, in our Click to Run solution, the ability to get started with best practice reporting. So I'm going to go into the Status Manager. As you can see, the Status Manager automatically allows the PMs to go somewhere to submit their status report. So every week or bi-weekly or monthly or however you do your status reporting, they would go in there, they would hit New. When they hit New on a status report, it's going to pull up all of that data that they need for their project. So again, it's allowing, this is coming from that EDC case study we just told you about. They wanted to create efficiencies. They wanted to reduce the number of time it took for people to populate data and focus on solving the problems. So we built that in an app for you. It's pulling your reporting summary, automatically pulling the upcoming milestones, issues, risks, everything that the PM is working on, the team is working on in their project collaboration sites is being pulled together in one report automatically. And then the PM, their only job is to go in here and click, is it red, green, yellow? And type in Y. So they're explaining what's happening. For more complex customers like EDC, so if you're doing kind of a sprint thing or an AIM, you can even go in here and make these automated, and we could put mathematical formulas that calculate these red, green, yellow for you. But if you just want the click to run, you don't have to do anything but go into the app and click new. And it's going to pull all the data for you and allow your PMs to quickly comment and send off their status reports. So I'll actually show you what that status report looks like. So once they click submit, it actually comes out like this. Here's my status report. Here's how I'm doing. Here's how I've trended. So I can start to see, are we panicking or are we predicting? As we've seen from that other customer case study, again, and it's pulling all of that data for my project directly into my report. So we took the best practices we learned from our customers and we offer this app that'll allow you to automatically do that with Project Online. The other thing that the Express solution provides is our Port app. So in Express, you get 4 reports. You get 2 performance reports and 2 governance reports. But if you were an enterprise customer or an AIM customer who's doing kind of a more complex, our Port reports can actually give you up to 19 different reports. So every kind of report you're possibly looking from, for keeping an audit trail of things, compliance for the PMO, down to project performance. I'm going to show you a few of them really quickly. So a status report is basically a dashboard where I can see, okay, how are my projects doing over time? Great place for your execs to go. And then if they want to drill down, they click and it directly will open that report that we just looked at, that the PM submitted. So they can quickly go in. It gives, everybody likes that one-page view. They want to see how is my organization doing? How is my team doing? How are my projects doing? So you're really allowing them to look at that one-page view to make the decisions they need to, and if they need more details, they can go into the project report. I'll show you another example of one. And this is the timesheet compliance report. So again, the PMs can go in here and say, have my team members submitted their timesheets? Because if they haven't submitted their timesheets, all that automatic pulling that it's doing into the report in terms of saying if my schedule is on track is incorrect, because I don't actually have the most updated data. So again, now your team or your PM is actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is working with the team, going to those resources who are not submitting their timesheets and getting them to update their information. And they're going to only the ones they have to or need to. So they're really focused and they have all the time, instead of doing a walk around talking to everybody about the same thing and then going back and doing the admin at their desk. So really it's reducing and allowing more efficiencies. As I mentioned previously, there are 19 other reports. If you're interested in ever looking at them, please visit our website or reach out to me. I'll give both of those details at the end of this presentation. I'm going to go back. Another app that was inspired by the best practice reporting from our case studies was what we call our portfolio app. Our portfolio app allows you to look at this data at a portfolio level. So I can look at it based on the different portfolios that I've set up in Project Online. I can drill down to the data. I can even drill down to programs. So I'm showing programs right now. I can look at the projects under a program and have that build up to the program level. But I can have it all in one view, and I can have the same drill down to go into the project to look at more details. So again, we've built a number of applications working with customers, looking at best practices that allow you to jump in really, really quickly. In the interest of time, that's as much as I'm going to cover. I'm going to go back into project management best practices. All right, so some take-home strategies that I want to leave you with today in terms of reporting. So whether or not you have technology, there are a lot of these that you can just do from the very beginning. So the first is don't just look at your report as a static figure. Take a moment and understand how your report is trending for the future. Look at if you're understanding that. So are you just doing project status reports as they happen and a nice lessons learned at the end that gets filed away somewhere and never looked at? Are you considering trending of projects that are similar and learning from best practices of that? Are you even looking at trending of that project from the timeline of when it started and how it's moving along, and if that project manager is able to get people working towards solving an issue before it actually becomes critical. Define measurable project performance metrics. So again, like we said, what does red, green, yellow really mean? What are the baselines? When do they change? How do you score them? Are there any weights that you're putting towards them? And determine why you're measuring. Ask people why you're measuring this. What decision is that stakeholder going to make so that your report is very accurate? You can give them the information that they need to make their decision from their one-pager. And then you can, if they want the details, you can, but you're not building this very, very large status report that's really difficult for people to come to the decisions they need to quickly. Make sure you keep an audit trail of all of the information, and make sure that, especially things like compliance reports, timesheets, project status, our PM submitting it on time, our resources submitting on time. Look at and compare how things have changed. So has the original scope changed, budget changed? Those are things that you want to do overall in terms of your reporting, but also to realize going back today, look at how often that changes in your projects. And do you need kind of escalated reporting that could really change the way your organization makes decisions today? Again, the number of reevaluations that you need to do. How often does this happen? How often do you have missed risks in your organization? So maybe you have a risk log that sits in an Excel sheet that doesn't get looked at until the weekly status report where the PM is pulling this out. Are we missing it? Do we need to automate it and have escalations that are set in place? Decisions that need to be made. So that's a really big take-home strategy. If you have technology or you don't, you can do this today. What is the decision that's going to be made if this gets out of green? And that is the number one thing, if I can leave you with anything today, to take home. Because if you have that plan in place, then you really get people moving and solving it instead of just looking at the metric. The metric should mean something. There should be a reason why you're reporting it as is. Set accountabilities for that. And look at how often you have issues that arise from CRs. So, again, does all of this get planned at the very beginning, but because of CRs, they're changing? And why have those issues arisen? Is it because the owner doesn't understand what to do with the information? Did they make the decision on the CR without understanding the impact that it's going to have to the project? And what communication do you need to change? Once you have all of those in place and you're understanding it, then I would say definitely look at having the technology to support it, because there's a lot of moving pieces here, and you really want to allow your PMs to help to manage those projects, to keep them on track, instead of gathering all this data to give reports, and then by the time the report is produced, it's out of date. So real-time information is very, very important, and Project Online and Project Server will allow you to automatically pull this data. And it is in real time with Power BI, with our apps, whatever you're choosing to use. You do have the technology to support it. If you need the support of a partner, feel free to reach out to us. Any questions?
Does not look like we had any questions. Any other closing remarks or statements you want to make?
Yes, I do. So if there are any questions that you want to reach out privately, please feel free to email me, Tanya@Agora Inc. If you have any questions on kind of these different types of reporting solutions that we have, feel free to check out the website, or again, shoot me an email. I hope you've learned something new today, whether that's about the technology or about reporting best practices, and thank you for joining.
All right, thank you, Tanya.
Thanks, bye now.